Hey guys, this is Fiend91 and I'm bringing you a video on my theory on how I believe season 3 of The Walking Dead will begin. I know that there's some theories out there now because I've already been through the game twice and I've played through to see the multiple endings. I haven't played through all 5, I played through 4 because the 5th one isn't really a different ending, which is just basically rejecting the family when you're with Jane at House. But to me, that's not too much different than accepting them. It is kind of, but anyway, I'll explain that later. I've worked a little theory out how season 3 will begin, and the theory that I've worked out is called all endings lead to Wellington. Now, what does this mean, one may ask? Now, if you guys remember, Kenny wanted to go to Wellington, and in Kenny's ending, you actually end up finding Wellington. But of course, you end up having to make a choice whether to stay at Wellington or go with Kenny. So obviously, if you stay at Wellington, season 3 can begin at Wellington with Clementine and AJ. I'm assuming AJ at Wellington. That can work in season 3. So let's not even worry about that ending. So let's instead go with, if you get to Wellington, but you don't decide to go inside Wellington, you decide instead to leave with Kenny. Now, when you decide to leave with Kenny, Edith actually, which is the person at the Wellington gate, actually gives you 2 bags of supplies so that you can last longer. I think that's more significant than people seem to realize, because if you leave with Kenny, she gives you 2 bags. If you leave with one, if you don't leave with Kenny, she gives Kenny 1 bag. Now Kenny can probably survive with 1 bag, but with you and AJ there, you probably need 2 bags to survive. Now, if you leave Wellington, then how can you end up at Wellington at the beginning of season 3? Well, actually, before you leave with Kenny, Edith will say something interesting.
If you're in the area, check back in a few months. We might be accepting people then.
Ah, so she might be accepting people then. Now, if the next Walking Dead game starts just a few months after this one, then really, that would mean that we would be in Wellington probably still. We'd just be in Wellington with Kenny as opposed to Wellington by ourselves. And it could work out that way. Edith actually says that, and that actually it's like you can still end up at Wellington even if you pick that ending. Now, what about the ending with Jane or the ending alone? Well, if you end alone, that's the thing. You see Clementine and AJ on a path by themselves. They're just walking, nothing too important, nothing's too significant about this area. They run into walkers. She covers AJ and herself in walker guts, and she tries to walk through the horde. Now, this is pretty easy to say. She could end up at Wellington. She's just walking by herself. She's blind. She could end up seeing this big old wall and being like, all right, let's go there. That's pretty easy to explain. So that ending could also end up at Wellington. Now, the biggest and hardest ending to end up at Wellington is probably Jane's ending, because you end up going the opposite direction back to House. And it's like, how could you end up at Wellington if you ended up here with Jane? Well, actually, Jane gives a little insight to this herself. When the family approaches, before you're able to accept them or not, Jane says,
"There's not that much food left."
Exactly. There isn't that much food left when the family is ready to come in and see if they could stay there. If there's not that much food left in House, do you really think they're still going to be in House a few months later if season 3 takes place a few months afterwards? Do you really think they're still going to be in this store that doesn't have much food left? Or are they going to pick up and leave and try to go somewhere else? And where are they going to end up? Wellington. That's just my prediction. Because I think that Clementine will be like, Krista told her Wellington, Kenny said Wellington. I think at the end, if they really lose food at House, they will go to Wellington. Now, if you turn back the family, that could also lead you to Wellington as well. Think of this. The family, before they leave, they say, or the father says they may be dangerous. And Jane actually warns they may come back. What happens if they come back and then it's just Jane and Clementine, the 2 girls. They may be capable, but I still think if they came back, Jane and Clementine may be forced to run. Especially with AJ. AJ would be a liability in that situation because AJ is just a little baby. And for them to be defending against themselves with a baby, it'd just be hard. So I really think that If the family came back after you turned them away, they'd be forced to leave. And where would they go? Perhaps Wellington. Why do I think Wellington? Because I think that if they're not just going to wander around aimlessly. If they ran out of food, if the family comes back and attack, I think they're going to go someplace. Even though Jane doesn't really think Wellington exists, I think that in their, like, if they were low on food and stuff, they would head there. And who knows, there may be a vehicle here. They may be able to take that vehicle out of here and get to Wellington pretty quickly, rather than taking the 9 days that it took Clementine and Kenny to get to Wellington from the rest stop. Now, those aren't the only reasons I believe that season 3 is going to begin at Wellington. And one of the other reasons, actually, is because when you get to Wellington with Kenny, you meet a very interesting character named Edith. Edith. When I first saw Edith and we have this conversation, I actually realized that she had potential to be a strong character based on what she said and how she said it. I mean, during this conversation of Edith, I think that she actually showed more emotions than some of the characters, more main characters throughout the game. She starts off cautious. Her personality goes from happy.
Oh, he's gonna be a little heartbreaker when he grows up.
And if Clem decides to leave with Kenny, her personality actually, I really did like the whole scene where she started to actually cry.
Sounds like she means business.
Not that you actually saw tears, but it sounded like she was crying. I did like how Edith's whole emotions and personality and her voice actually was pretty good. So I really think Edith is going to be a main character in season 3. So that's another reason why I think all endings will eventually lead to Wellington. Also, there's one more thing about Wellington. It's mentioned in 4 different episodes. First by Krista, second by Kenny, I think the third time by Kenny again, and the fourth time by Kenny once more, and maybe by a couple other people, I don't know. But Wellington is mentioned so much. I feel like they were like premonition to something, or like they were like trying to show you that Wellington was going to be an important factor in the next game, or that something like that, because it was just mentioned a lot of times. I mean, why would they mention it that many times if it wasn't going to be something in the next game? I think the Wellington ending is the best. It's the strongest ending of all of them. And I think that's the main reason why all endings eventually lead to Wellington. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I think that Wellington is where we're going to start in season 3 no matter what ending we choose. But tell me yours. You guys think that we're going to start in House? You guys think that maybe somewhere else? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Do you guys think the multiple endings will mean a lot more? Or that will you guys agree with me about how Wellington will probably be where we start out in season 3? All right, just leave your thoughts in the comment below. And thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and God bless.